The latest consumer price index was also released this morning, with prices remaining stubbornly high for working American families. We're going to go first to EJ Antoni. He is a public finance economist and research fellow at the Heritage Foundation to talk about these latest numbers. EJ, welcome back to Washington Watch.
Well, thank you for having me back.
So, EJ, what did we learn today from today's Consumer Price Index release?
Well, unfortunately, what we continue to see is that Americans are getting poorer because we are seeing prices rise faster than earnings, and we are seeing the continuation of relatively high interest rates pummeling people on everything from mortgages to credit card debt and everything in between. I mean, all in all, the typical American family today is about $7,400 poorer than when Biden took office.
It was interesting. I was just reading an AP article came out today. Basically, you read this spin, and they're basically saying, oh, everything is working. We're seeing inflation come down. This should be the American family. While not feeling it, they need to realize that the economy's better.
My goodness, I liken it to the beginning of the NFL season when you hear a lot of commentators say that a team is better than its record. You know, maybe it had a fluke game where the referees had a lot of bad calls that blew the game for the team, or maybe they had some players that were injured, couldn't play that week, whatever the case may be. And so a team may be, quote unquote, better than its record. But you only get to say that for a few weeks, right? When you're halfway through the season or even further, it becomes more and more difficult to make that excuse. At some point, your record is your record, and the record of Bidenomics is very clearly one of failure.
So, EJ, let's talk about how do we get this under control? Certainly, I don't think we continue to, with debt-fueled spending is going to help out the situation.
No, you're absolutely right. And actually, that's precisely what needs to stop is all of this debt-fueled spending, which is largely financed actually by creation of money at the Federal Reserve. And so all of that needs to end. We need to shrink down government because the more we grow the federal budget, the more we end up having to shrink the family budget. That's exactly what we've seen over the last 2.5 years. People don't like it. It hasn't worked. And we need to stop it. We need to reverse it. All you need to do in order to reverse it, though, is to simply reverse the policies that got us here. And again, that's government spending.
But that's not what we see being proposed by the Biden administration, even in supplemental spending. We're seeing now with the current debt, the servicing of that debt now has reached a point of about $1 trillion a year. How do we sustain that?
Oh, you can. It's not sustainable at all. And you're absolutely right that the things that are being proposed by this administration and the big spenders in Congress are precisely the opposite of what we need. And unfortunately, things are really starting to snowball at that point, or at this point, I should say. And here's where things get dangerous. As the debt continues to grow and the cost to service that debt, which you just mentioned, it's over $1 trillion a year now, as that continues to grow, you very quickly get to a point where the cost of servicing the debt becomes so big that it is fueling the deficit, which makes the debt even bigger, which further increases the cost of servicing the debt, and so on and so on. And again, you can see how that quickly snowballs. We are already at the point where just interest on the debt, just that one expense alone, is consuming 40% of all personal income taxes.
EJ, when you look at the Fed, and there's speculation, what are they going to do? Are they going to continue to raise the interest rates? Every time they raise that interest rate, the government ends up spending more to service its debt. So this becomes kind of almost a death spiral.
Oh, certainly. But we have to remember that this is a problem that they created for themselves. The only reason that, I shouldn't say the only reason, but one of the key reasons why we have so much government debt today and consumer debt as well is because the Federal Reserve artificially kept rates far too low for far too long. And so it basically hid the true cost of that debt for literally more than 2 decades. When you make the cost of borrowing money so obscenely low, don't be surprised when more people, including the government, want to borrow money. And by keeping that cost of servicing the debt so low, it allowed the politicians to get away with growing the debt by trillions upon trillions of dollars. Well, now the chickens have come home to roost.
EJ, as we're actually talking right now, the House is just debating over a continuing resolution to basically move funding, freezing funding at its present level into January. It's as we talked about in this program yesterday. It's a tiered or a laddered approach. Part of the funding ends in January, part in February. Are you optimistic that as they return to actually doing appropriations bills, that is a step in the right direction of trying to get a hold of this out of control spending, since we've just been doing these omnibus and continuing resolutions for years?
Well, I understand the logic behind what the speaker is trying to do here, and I do sympathize with the fact that he just took over this role only a short while ago. He is finally, he's basically still in the process of putting his staff together, so they haven't really had much time to put forward, to craft and put forward actual spending bills here. The problem is that just as he hasn't had a lot of time, the nation may not have much time left either, because again, as we just said, things are beginning to snowball, and eventually they're going to get to the point where it doesn't matter how hard we try to stop them, the momentum is going to take us over the falls. So again, while I sympathize with the speaker for the position in which he has been put today, I'm not sure that kicking the can any further down the road is doing enough to solve the problem.
Final question for you, EJ, Antoni. The 2024 elections, these numbers, I mean, you can spin the numbers, the media can spin the numbers, but the American family is feeling it. Is this going to be a primary issue in the 2024 elections, the economy?
I think so, especially when you consider that the last several months things have deteriorated noticeably. I think that's a key reason why several polls by left-leaning media outlets such as the New York Times have all of a sudden placed Trump at a huge advantage to Biden. In one of them, for example, Trump won 5 of 6 key swing states and captures over 300 electoral votes if the election were held today, according to this poll. And I mean, that's not really surprising when you think about the fact that everything, especially necessities, have gone up so dramatically in price under Biden, while wages have nowhere near kept up. Look at housing, for example. Just as one quick example here, the monthly mortgage payment on a median price home, we're not talking a mansion, just a median price home, it's 112% higher today than it was when Biden
You can't hide
took office.
that. You can't spend it. You can't hide it.